Hello and welcome to the next episode of essentially walking you through the process of what studios do and how to, write things. In the last episode, let's see, where is it? Oh good, it's still there. I wrote this tune just to play the melody because, I only have one hand free. So I opted for these slash chords. That's part of essentially what's turned into my writing style. Okay, so slash chords. I'm trying to make it so you can see the keyboard here, but I guess it ain't gonna happen. So I'm just gonna have to explain it to you by ear. So Elton John actually does this a lot in his songs. Instead of using the regular 5 chord, so for example, let's say I just have this simple chord progression here. This is just C, F, G. Totally fine. I can make a song out of that. You know what I mean? Just simple things. But check out this sound. I'm gonna play what I like to do is I use what's called the 4 over the 5 in this particular circumstance. So you can see that little bit of rub, and this, I just love this particular sound. That really does it for me. So I use a lot of slash chords. There's a song that I wrote, I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's coming on the next album, but here's the bridge to it. Let's see if I remember it. Okay, now that sounds like, I don't know, almost 80s-ish, right? So, funny story. The first song I ever wrote was a pop song, and it was completely by accident. And it went like this, at least the bridge part to it. It was similar. So I must have been all of 12 years old, and I was huddled in my room with my little tiny keyboard writing this out. Oh my gosh, it's the first thing I'm ever writing. It was a big deal for me. And I woke up the next day, and I realized that this song is, if I could fly. I can't really sing it well, but I'd pick you up and take you into the night. So I was like, oh man, I completely rewrote that song. Anyway, so we were recording it, and the drummer on the track was like, oh my gosh, that's that song from the 80s, But here's the difference. So their song goes to a minor. And it's cool, it's just simple motion, just moving up, That's a great thing to write, really. But what I did was I left this bass note here I'm not going to play the melody, I'm just going to play the chords. Okay? So, yes, there are similarities to that and that other song, which I can't think of the name of. The song, If I Could Fly, I'd pick you up and take you into the night. So sometimes your influences, or I don't even know what artist sung that tune, but it's ingrained in my head so much that it comes out every now and then in little pieces, and that's a case of it. Okay, so those who know me know that I am not a very organized person. So I had to learn how to do that. In the other episode, you'll remember me saying, I had specific ideas about what I wanted to do. So some of these, well actually it seems like most of these songs are going to remain on the album. And And you notice that I did more covers here. So my other albums did a lot more original music. I have more than just these 2 originals now. There's more going on there. This folder is, even though it says new, it's actually rather old. So inside of this folder, I took notes about, okay, so here, this Bill's Groove, I needed Matt on drums for that. When he did it, I checked it off. You know, it's all logistics. And then you can see here, I started this February. It seems, at least this folder was started on February. And I did try to do Wake Me Up When September Ends. That's a very interesting production that I did. It's not going to be released. So here's my version. You know, basically I just keep all the music here. So here's my version of Like I'm Gonna Lose You. What else is in here? You know, some originals that I wrote. Let's see. Wow, that's amazing. This doesn't... Oh, look. Okay, there's one slash chord. But there's not a lot of slash chords here. If you're working, especially if you have lyrics and stuff like this, you know, create a folder. If you have to rely on other people, you know, write down like, okay, I need this person to do this for me, I need this person to do that for me, and so on. I think I'm just gonna name this Parallels. I doubt I'm spelling it right because I always spell parallel wrong anyway. I know there's not 2 A's there. Maybe 3 L's, I don't know. But yeah. So there's a boatload of stuff that you have to worry about. I like to do things to a click. So we're going to go ahead and create a click track. A click is what we call a metronome in recording. Okay, so that my studio calls the Nazi click. I have other options. Drummers really like the Nazi click because it cuts through all the drums and stuff, but I despise it. Thus, why we call it the Nazi click. One of my interns actually gave it that name, actually. Tempo is important, especially in the realm of producing an album. You don't want all of your songs to be the same tempo. You want them to vary a little bit. Okay, so we need to bump that up a bit. Okay, so before I start with the recording, I just want to show this for those of you who are completely new to recording. Here I'm using Pro Tools Express. Pro Tools has been an industry standard for years, possibly even decades by now. Here I just have a simple stereo. It can only record 2 channels at once. Stereo is 2 channels, mono is 1. And there are workarounds for that. There's also in the back of this, I'm not going to flip it around, but on the back of this there's also aux-ins. So you have both this XLR and 1/4 inch, and then on the other side you have 1/4 inches. So when I need to record more than 2 tracks, I simply will go to something like this, you know, a mixer. So when I do my drum tracks, for example, I'll have, you know, the bass drum, snare drum, and so on, and get this mixed down, and then pipe that, because this has 2 stereo outs, I'll pipe that into this interface here. So before I record this scratch track, I want to make one thing clear. You don't have to get every track right on your scratch tracks. I mean, that's why it's a scratch track, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a general idea of what it sounds like. If you flub a note here or there, totally fine. Since this is my project and it's just the way I do it, I'm going to try and get the best take that I can for the electronic piano part. And then we're going to go through and do some overdubbing, maybe with a horn. You know, it really depends on how this song moves. So yes, I will see you in a second in Pro Tools, my friends. I have to remind myself, this is really just to give you a gist of how all this stuff works. But I'm still going to try to get relatively deep into at least my normal habits and how music is produced. So here what I've done is I just completed my piano track, or at least what's going to be my piano track. There are a few small mistakes on it, but essentially what I'm going to do later on after we complete this, probably in the next episode, is I'm like, let's say this part is bad but that part is good and it's the same, I'm just going to do a little cut and paste maneuver. And this is not a modern thing. This used to happen on tape as well. So when they used tape machines, they would do the same splicing that you do in Pro Tools. Now I'm going to have to fool around with this a little bit, so you're basically going to watch that. So let's just deal with volume for a second. I want to see where it stands. That's pretty good. Okay, so that could use some compression and stuff, but I mean the volume is okay for our purposes right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and click out of that. So this is, as you heard, just essentially the bass and the keyboard part. So you want to have maximum control over your track. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, whoops, get myself out of there. I'm actually going to duplicate this track. Because if I have only this one track, I can't control the bass as well, and I want to be able to control the bass. Bass, to me, as a mixer and engineer, is incredibly important, and I like to have almost a little bit too much of it in a song. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just some presets here. Now an equalizer, those of you familiar with guitar amps and stuff like that, this is the same thing. You have, low frequency, low mid, mid, and high frequency. Pro Tools and many other programs like it come with just some default settings, and I use them in this instance. You can see down here, these are all settings that I've created for different people in different situations. Where is this thing? Oh, right, it's under DJ. So first, I want to have only treble, so I'm going to do a bass kill. I'm going to go ahead and just solo this track so you can hear the difference. So you can hear that the treble is coming through a lot more. In fact, I'm even going to just nudge this guy a little bit more over. And then I'm going to do the exact opposite with this track. This track, I'm going to go ahead and do the same 7-band EQ. What's going on with this? There it is. And instead of a bass kill, we're going to do a treble and mid kill, and that's going to make this track sound more like a bass, or at least emphasize the bass. So I have essentially the same recording still, but I'm going to be able to control both parts independently, which is important. So see, when I raise the volume on this, you feel more bass. Okay, so I just finished adding my guitar part, and I wanted to show you guys just how, how handy these digital interfaces are. I can find, there it is. So I have this guitar part here, and I did it completely clean into it. So I'm just going to play you a little bit of it. So yeah, so that's what a guitar sounds like clean, but I have the ability to essentially change it. So let's unbypass this. It's going to be loud, but... So see, I can change the sound with this amp synthesizer here. So what I like to do, because this is jazz and not rock, I think I just use the vintage clean. There you go. See, that makes it sound cleaner. When we go through mixing this, we're going to be adding reverb and all this other jazz. I meant to actually put my plugins, my standard mastering plugins, on this master track, and I will do that soon. I do that because I found when I do a mix, if I don't put those masters in, if I don't put all my own presets in there, then I wind up just having to mix again, and it's just not worth your time. So I'm going to go ahead and record some more parts. I think I'm going to do the sax melody next, and maybe just kind of fake a solo for the time being, just do a scratch track. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the microphones I use for miking other instruments that I'm not putting in directly. Okay, so this is the lowest model of this particular AKG, the Perceptions. You will recognize them. They used, I think it's either Conan O'Brien, one of those late night talk show hosts, used a basic condenser like this. You can't really see the brand, but it's clearly a Perception. So this mic has a couple of, add-ons to it. Other mics have more add-ons where it will control essentially the field that picks up the sound, which I really don't want to get into because it's complex. But here you can see we have a flat line, and then we have a flat line going down. This flat line going down is a bass cut. So if you're recording a treble instrument and you have a bass player playing nearby, and you want to minimize bleed, you can just flip this switch and have a bass cut. The other nice thing about this microphone is it has a dB cut as well. I'm trying to get it in focus there. Try again. There we go. This minus 20 dB switch obviously takes it down by 20 decibels. So if you're recording something that's really loud, like an amp or something like that, you can switch it from 0, which is, I believe that's still technically unity, meaning no resistance, and flip it to minus 20. These I use for pretty much everything, except for recording drums. I have a mic set for that, but these AKGs come in handy, and I've used them on all the records I've done, and I really, really, really like them. Okay, so now I've added the saxophone to it. I'm thinking, like I said before, I'm going to be adding strings and other stuff to this.